Hello and welcome back to the Voice Box podcast. My name is Gabby Mendes and I'm your host today. And today I'm joined by two wonderful writers and poets, Holly McNish and Laurie Bolger. Hello ladies, welcome to the show.
Hiya. Hey lady.
It's so nice to have you here. You guys are just like a bundle of energy and bundle of joy. You walked through the door and you were like giggling away, talking about Gloucester services. You've had a great old day together, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I told Laurie that's where we have to stop as I introduced her to them today. Really exciting.
Yeah, and we're talking about Gloucester services because right now we're at Cheltenham Literature Festival because you guys are going to be speaking later on, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are doing a gig with Raise the Bar, which is like a brilliant poetry organisation in Bristol that runs just amazing gigs, don't they? With Deanna Roger, who's another friend and poet, and it's just always a real treat to be at Cheltenham.
Like the Poetry Sugar Babes at Cheltenham Lit Fest. It's going to be big.
Sugar babes. I love that. Do you guys work together a lot then?
Yeah, quite a lot. Like we do lots of things separate. Laurie teaches a lot more than I do because I don't know how to teach poetry and she does. True.
And Holly tours a lot more than anyone I know, and is absolutely amazing at that. So I try and jump on when I can, and I guess, I don't know, if you fancy some writing, I'll help you out any day.
Oh, thanks. So we're on tour together now for like a week, which is really nice.
How did you guys actually meet?
I remember. You don't remember. So
No, because I just knew this would come up, and I don't think give me a clue.
I don't remember how we became friends, but I remember how we met. Laurie used to co-run a night called Bang Said the Gun that I really liked in London, and they asked me to do it. And it was quite early on in me doing gigs, and I was so nervous that I paid to get into my own gig that I was like headlining because the woman was like a very trendy woman on the door. And she asked me for like a £5 and I panicked and paid it to get into my own gig. And I remember that gig quite well. But I don't know how we met, but we met there and just through poetry.
How long ago was that then?
10 years,
At least 10 years ago,
maybe
I
12.
And I guess your
maybe
careers
more.
have kind of evolved and grown together. Obviously, you get to work on some different projects together and stuff. Like, a lot's happened in 10 years.
Yeah, it's just so nice doing gigs together. I don't live in London. I say that because so many people I know that do poetry live in London. But yeah, visit each other, chat to each other. It's just nice. It's nice doing gigs with people that you're comfortable with because it's a really nerve-wracking thing to do. And if I don't know someone I'm doing a gig with, or I feel like I need to kind of like, got to like watch out for them, whereas I'm internally panicking. So it's good to have someone that you can do
and I
that
just
with.
save up all the things I need to talk about. Wait till I'm in the passenger seat of the car and then just let her rip, which is great. I honestly think you're probably the only person that I've ever shared a hotel room with that is actually like I've actually not wanted to go to sleep or have any of my own space. We just eat chips in bed and chat, and that is absolutely dream. It's such a dream.
It's
I
really
love
nice
travelling with you,
and it's also cheaper on tour if you can share rooms.
Then we could go and
Win-win.
clean out Gloucester services. So, but yeah, it's totally dreamy.
Do you think that your like friendship has helped shape your writing as well? Like, do you do some stuff differently now, or do you ever do stuff together? Like, has it had an impact on either of you that way?
Both of us write about friendship a lot, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's.
You make me braver, definitely, in getting up. Last night on stage, I just got up and asked the audience if anyone had been dumped, and then threw a poetry tote bag out to the audience, and it all got quite rowdy.
Yeah.
But I just was like, this is great because it's just Holly, and it's and it's beautiful, and I love introducing you in a really over the top way because I know you kind of hate it, but yeah, it's great. And just watching you signing books, and you have this huge queue, and the energy is just so there all the time, and I get really inspired by that. And I feel like when I go home from touring with you, I feel quite rejuvenated. Whereas when you're on tour with male comedians, sometimes if you're the only lady, you can feel quite worn out. So
I think Laurie makes me feel excited for poetry as well. It's so nice watching someone before you go on, but also just calmer, I think.
To have a friendly face there.
Yes, yeah. And also
Absolutely.
it's less lonely. I think touring, like I wish I had more time, and I organise all my own tours, and I wish I could do it for other people because I organise loads around like going and visiting friends or like touring with friends, or I've got a kid. So I organise tours because tour companies don't really care if you need to not, be away from home a lot. So like organised a whole tour around this like trampoline park in Wales last year and a go-karting centre that's got a theatre near it and all this stuff. And I'd love to do it for other people because I think it can be, if you're touring on your own, or a lot of people I know in bands, it can be quite depressing
Yeah.
and quite lonely.
Your tour's massive, isn't it? Like, you've got, how many dates are you doing?
It's
and
about
you organise it
50.
all?
I organise all of them because I
Wow.
just don't think, like, if you're with a tour production companies, they don't like take your life into account because they can't, or they just want to do as many dates as possible in a row, which I've never been able to do from having a kid. And actually the way that I've organised it now, I really like it. And it's really like in school holidays, I take my kids, so I organise it in different places there, or I know that I've got mates in Birmingham, Newcastle, I can visit my family. Like there's one tour that's sort of around my dad's birthday, basically. So there's like all the places near his house. But I just think it's so much nicer.
Is it not
to
stressful to because it's essentially you're planning loads of mini events, aren't you?
Yeah,
Like,
but
how do you keep straight head?
I love a spreadsheet. I love the tour organising. And to be honest, I do it about 2 years in advance so that theatres are more likely to have space, so it's less stressful, like trying to find the dates in the right places. But I love it. I book bookshops, independent bookshops for all the gigs. I love getting to know the people that run them, work there, all the booksellers and all the venues. A lot of the music venues, most of them are managed by guys, and a lot of the like tech staff that I deal with. And they're just so lovely. Like all these, found this like random little, it's called like Magic Lantern, an old cinema, like Art Deco cinema in like North Wales, and all these like music venues in Manchester and Leeds, and bookshop and record store in Hull. I just love it. It's like such a nice thing, finding all these places in the UK and chatting to them. And the more you do, the more you can just phone them up and say, can I come again?
How do you think like live events has an impact then on poetry? Because I think there's something different between, you know, reading a poem, seeing it on social media and then hearing it in real life, don't you think?
Yeah, it's nice. It's just the audience, isn't it? It's so
It's
nice.
your gigs are so warm as well. When I jump on a little bit of a tour run, like one of the sort of little, like this week, it's just so nice. And you make it look really easy. And we were talking about it today, you know, people sort of maybe from the outside might think that the venues are approaching you year on year and doing it all for you, but you do so much yourself. And I think like making it as homemade as you can. Also, you get to engineer the tour to where you want, but that takes so much organisation. I would not at all be able to do it. I think what I bring is I'd be like, let's give the sound guys some flowers or serve a cream tea to someone in the audience or something. Just basically make it more complicated. But yeah, it's just like, I hate spreadsheets. So yeah, you make it look so easy. But when your audience comes in, they are so beautiful. And we always like obviously get nervous. But then last night, do you remember on the stairs, I was like, this is great. Like, look at these people coming out to poetry to feel connected and see. It's absolutely wonderful.
It's really nice. And to try and remember that, because obviously poetry is not, let's be honest, it's not the most popular thing to go to a gig. Like comedy, music's a lot more popular. And I think sometimes I feel like, oh God, there's people that have brought their friends, which I'd say often about maybe half the audience is someone that's been dragged along by someone else. Sometimes they don't even tell them it's poetry. They're just like, do you want to come to a gig, so that they don't say no. But it's so nice just having people there and remembering that they are there to hear poems. Like they're not, I've worked a couple of times with like a manager like years ago, and they always try to add something, like add a DJ. So I'd be like reading poems with a DJ, or like try to, just different stuff that just some people
Doesn't
can
work,
do.
yeah.
I just like, it's like, just read the poems. People are just there. And I think everyone loves like being read a bedtime story.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think sometimes I think, oh, but there's nothing, I'm not, like when the technician or the sound people are like, so do you move on stage? Do you need any different light? It's like, no, just read the poems.
The sound
But
guys
it's
love
so
it
nice.
because they're just like, it's a mic, and then we stand at it and then we just use the same mic. There was a lady that came to the Bristol gig a year ago or whenever it was that we were last there, and she was at the back, in the back row, and she said, I deliberately booked the front row this time or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, I want to hold up a banner at Holly McNish gigs and say, like, would anyone like to be my friend? Because it's just, I don't know, there's like this collectiveness and loads of particularly women say they come on their own, and it feels really great to go on their own. I love going everywhere on my own. I love going to cinema, eating like in a restaurant on my own. I mean, literally, apart from hotels with you. I love my own space. But I feel like, yeah, it is a lovely atmosphere, and you can talk to people, you know. It doesn't feel stuffy at all. I don't know, maybe poetry and maybe our poetry is quite open,
nice
and it gives people
together.
the opportunity to talk to you.
How, like, you know, how do you know what to write about? Where do you get your inspiration from?
I was talking about my book Lady today, and I think I wanted to I'm very inspired by the working class women in my family who just, you know, say some really strange things and have had really hard lives. And I wanted to put their voices in a book. And I remember trying to go into like archives of like, you know, the Irish in Britain stuff. And it was so great. And then actually I just realised that the best way to get their voices through was just to write about my own experience, because it's in all of that, you know. So I've written a lot of poems set on a spin bike, right? And my nan in Ireland never learnt to ride a bike. And she, you know, she literally, like, when she was a kid, she had an accident, she lost her leg, and she used to work in this factory in Queen's Park when they came over to London, and she just used to like walk determined down the road. She'd never get a lift, never get a taxi, even when she was like 80. And I'm so inspired by watching women like that. But then actually when I'm on this spin bike, I'm like, I'm going to the 90-minute class and I'm doing it, you know. And I watch, like, me and my sister, the way we clean, the way we cook and care for people. It's very in us, but also I'm fighting that all the time. So I just wrote about my own experience in Lady, and then I think all that stuff comes through. But I think I think we write about stuff that we, you know,
I think
give a shit about.
So many people as well think they're, like, if I occasionally do workshops and stuff, especially in schools with teenagers, they always think they've got to make stuff up, or like, oh, I haven't, like, I remember there was about 18, oh, I haven't been traveling, this, you know, if I haven't really been to another country, or I haven't, like, this idea that you're too boring or your life is too boring to write about. I hate it so much. Like, there's so many interesting things about everyone that you can just write about. And I think, to be honest, for me, it's that as well, but like learning stuff. Like, I mainly read non-fiction books if I'm reading, and I love, like, there's just so much stuff that I don't know, or, you know, no one knows about. And even little things like learning about tears the other day, it was like 2 years ago, but learning that if you're crying for like different reasons, your tears have got like different chemical, whatever you call it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and like when I had a daughter and I like breastfed her for a bit, and I learned that like the baby's saliva like communicates with your body. So if they've got like a cold and stuff, then it like and then the consistency of your milk has different like, antibodies in it and shit like that. Like, I just think like the human body, and that's definitely from my mum being like the human body, and like I don't really know anything about animals, nature, plants, nothing. And every time I learn something, I just find it all so exciting. Like, even learning that I could cut a piece of mint the other day, because I said I was going to buy some mint, and my friend is a gardener, and he was like, what are you doing? Like, just cut it, put it in water, and it takes 2 weeks, and then you can plant it. And I did it, and I was like, how is it? It's just magic. Like, there's so much very cheap magic around. It's just fascinating.
I think writing about just what's in front of you as well does that, you know, because they become like portals to other things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you write in your own voice, which is an amazing thing, and you stick with that, you know, and I think that's really hard sometimes to do that.
Thanks.
Well done.
You guys also write about taboo topics like, well, motherhood is not taboo, but, you know, motherhood, sexuality, all of those kind of things. Yeah. How did you get into that, and what gives you ideas for those kind of poems?
I think it's just ordinary life, isn't it? It's just we've made them taboo because society is so fucking weird. Like, honestly, I was told certain things, like periods, I guess, is one of them. Like, I wrote a poem about my granddad going out of the room every time Sandwich Tower advert came on the telly. Like, and I noticed that he didn't go out for like any other types of blood, but even just that blue liquid. Like, he thought it was so awful that they showed it on telly that he'd go and stand behind the door and protest. But things like that, it's like, it's called taboo. So it happens every month, and it has done since I was like 13. And like breastfeeding, I wrote a poem about being like embarrassed to breastfeed in public because one person had told me that I shouldn't, and was told that that was a taboo. And it's like, it's literally like in loads of places, your kid could die if you don't. Like, that's feeding a baby. Like, it's. So I feel like taboo stuff isn't taboo in my life. It's just taboo because of the society you live in, really.
I think people come to your gigs especially to see someone giving a voice to some of those things as well. And that's what I meant at the beginning of the podcast about feeling braver. You know, I'll always go for the period poem and I'll read it first, you know, because I'm like, and it's watching.
So I do the opposite because I'm always worried about like somebody's bought someone and then they're like, oh God, put off, because I still have in my head, oh God, don't talk about that because blah, blah, blah. It's so stupid. So I'll always do like a wholesome poem about my gran and then do a poem about sex. But I shouldn't actually.
Like a roller coaster.
I actually thought that last night at the gig, you went on and immediately did that one and I was like, oh, that was brave. But it's
I just asked the
ridiculous.
audience if anyone was on their period, and then
I know, and I was like shocked.
That caused a lot of good chats in the queue. It was really lovely. But there's a bit in that poem about the women in my family at a dinner party, which, like, you know, like in the 80s when people started sort of having dinner parties and feeling a bit posh, like, well, in my family they did. And I remember being a kid on the floor of the dinner party and like watching the women kind of get squashed quite a bit. And then there was this one night where I guess I was just about old enough to realise what they were talking about, but not really. They were making jokes about period paint pot colour charts, like that they'd painted on the wall, like swatches, and they were making up names for them, and it was all a bit of a joke. I remember just staying up. I could never go to sleep if there was something happening. And I just remember being like, what are they talking about? But whatever it is, like, they're powerful, right? And they're leading it, and that's really inspiring, you know.
I also think like most taboos, the more I talk about certain things and have people say, oh, thanks for talking about it. Like, I'm not in a family that's going to disown me for talking about certain things. Like, my mum's definitely not like enamoured by the fact that I'll talk about like oral sex or whatever. But she, you know, it's like, fine. They're you know, quite rude as well and everything. But I think the more that I've looked into things like child protection, things to do with motherhood and naming body parts and all this stuff, I think that every taboo is like really puts people at risk. Like the taboos for men, like not crying, not talking about things, not talking about feelings with their mates, like that's putting men at risk and boys at risk. And not talking about not being able to name your body parts, not being able to talk about sex, that puts children and vulnerable people, you know, all at risk of, you know, somebody doing something and then you being too ashamed to tell someone, or you thinking that is too vulgar. So the idea that like stuff I write about is vulgar, I used to be like, oh yeah, it is a bit. And then I realised people were like, it was like the word vulva, I've been told, is like vulgar to use in a poem or talking about just anything like that. But actually, yeah, the more I've read about it, and I've read bloody loads of research, it's just like all these taboos, I think just put especially young people and vulnerable people at risk. So,
and was there someone that sowed that seed at the beginning of your career to think like, I can sound like myself and that's okay, I'm going to talk about ordinary life, I'm going to talk about what's, you know, you said that you write in your own voice. Is there someone that empowered you to do that, or is it just you just grown in that confidence over time?
I think it's just grown over time. And maybe like when I was pregnant and when I had my kid, I wrote a diary and then that became a book. And I took out certain like personal things and like daughter's name or her favourite toys and things like that. But I think just seeing the effect that book had on a lot of new mums and stuff. And it was just my diary and things that I couldn't talk about. And that was specifically why I wrote about things I couldn't talk about. So I think that seeing that helped, and me thinking, I don't have a family that's that embarrassed by it. I am not that embarrassed talking about these things.
I feel like my mum gets really embarrassed, and then the poems in the book that you think she's going to hate and feel like, embarrassed or exposed in some way are the ones that actually I think she likes the best, and they're the ones that get published the most, and they're the ones that hold the most power. So there's something in it. It was definitely harder at first, like touring with Bang and stuff. It was great. It was like a punk poetry night, and I used to support bands a lot, but I think I felt I had to be very loud and very sweary and a bit drunk and a bit like, you know, kind of mad dresses and stuff. And actually, I think there's a lot more power in the way that I'm doing it now.
I think also people always tell you that other people will be embarrassed. Yeah. Like quite often people are like, they like DM me to check if I'm going to do poems about fingering or periods because they're bringing their dad or they're bringing their, you know, an older people. It's like they're just people that have had more life than you. The idea that they'll be more embarrassed or have less experience is so silly. And I think quite often, especially with men, I'm told that it will be embarrassing, that they won't want to hear it. And actually that's never been the case. It's always been people telling me that other people are more, the other people are going to be embarrassed, or they're talking for their husband, or they're talking for their dad, or they're talking for someone else. I had a poem that I'd written about the fact that a lot of the time when women are on their period, they also get diarrhea. Lovely topic. There's also lots of love poems that I write about. Never thought I'd be writing about that, but I was just like, oh, this is so rubbish. Like, why does my body have to do this as well? Like, this is so disgusting. And I wrote this very short, like, poem basically at the time. And I put it online and my mum was like, oh, seriously? Like that's too much. Like why? And then I sent her all the replies because I talked about it with her and she was like, it's so awful, isn't it? But it's just our family. I'm so sorry. It's just our family. And it had like 1,000 comments. Oh my God, I get this. And then there was doctors who told me the reason for it, because your body's like shedding stuff. Your hormones tell your body to release stuff, but actually it's not specific enough. So it just fucking releases everything for some people. And I was like, Mum, it's a scientific thing. Like, look.
I'm basically a scientist.
Yeah, I've learned so much from people in the comments. I've learned that I'm like ugly from a lot of people in comments, but I've also learned that like loads of scientific stuff that's amazing. And I did a really polite set once because everyone was like over 80. It was like a women's institute gig in the village. And it was like most people were like over 80. And I panicked, didn't do any of my rude stuff at first because they're my grand's age and I thought you have to be polite to your grand sort of thing. So I did this poem about like women's architects in Cambridge and this woman shouted from the back, "We're not dead yet."
Oh,
and
yes.
And then I did one of the slightly rude ones. She was like, "That's more like it." And then afterwards they came up to me and they were telling me about things like one of them was sent away because she got pregnant unmarried. One of them had their baby taken from them. One of them, she said, "Oh my God, why do young people think we've seen less penises than you have?" And then we wouldn't talk. And it totally blew. Yeah. I was like, I'm so prejudiced actually. And I thought, yeah, of course, you're just older than me. You're just like, that's it. That's the only difference.
You guys also talk about like social and political themes in your work as well. How do you do that but still keep the warmth and humour that you have? Because I feel like sometimes it can be quite a heavy topic, but you're always like, there's always a lighthearted element to all your poems as well.
I think you've got to write about what you know. Like I'm never going to go up and... I remember saying, I don't think my poems are political enough and I feel like I'm not doing enough to change the world. I'm just making these poems in my book and it's all pink but it is so political because what it's doing, and somebody said this to me once, is by you getting up and performing it, that's political. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
by you fighting really hard to get your book into bookshops, that's really hardcore, you know? I remember going as a kid and the poets that I was looking at, like they weren't like me at all, you know? And I think it makes me so proud to be able to see a book that's dedicated to my working class nan on a bookshelf in a posh bookshop somewhere, because there aren't very many working class voices on the shelves full stop, you know? So that I think is as political as I get. And I have to remember that you know, by writing about my auntie who, you know, like swore and coughed and was thick set and amazing, you know, that's political because it's teaching the women in my family who have made themselves small to be bigger, you know?
Yeah.
And getting up and speaking the poems is political. So I have to remember that. But you're much cleverer than me with actually writing about politics, I think.
That's not true. I just write about it. I'm not clever with this bit. I just write about it more. But I think so I agree that so much stuff that we don't think is political is, and I think that a lot about stuff to do with parenting and motherhood and sexual stuff. Like somebody said, your fingering poems are quite fun. Like I've written like 4 in my life, but then I've been called fingering poet because I guess it's more than the average collection. But like it's like, well, that is political because it's like a safe sex that no one talks about. You know, we obsess over it. Like that for me is political to do it. But then I guess specifically talking about immigration a lot, you know, talking about things like that, or specifically talking about xenophobia, racism. I guess like what you said about having humour or lightheartedness or like caring in it. I think I just don't think it helps to just shout at people. And I don't think, I feel like I've been brought up in a family, and I guess I don't really believe people if you're white and you say you've got no people in your family that are like racist. I just don't, unless you have the most liberal family in the world. I'm just like really? Not one distant cousin that you might know. But I also don't think it helps. And I've had loads of conversations with like my grandmas, and they're not horrible people. They were lovely people. And one of my grands was like telling me in the care home that I had to be careful walking out because there was so many refugees that were trying to like stab me. And it had been something that had been written in like the Scottish Mail. And the idea of me saying to her, "Oh my God, you're like a racist idiot," or "You're so stupid, how can you think that?" I just don't think it helps. And I actually don't think it's true. And I feel like it's not even making jokes, but actually being kind of caring. And I feel like I can do that because I am white and I've not had people be racist towards me. So I also feel like it is up to me, because fair enough, if you've lived and you've had the xenophobia against you, or you've had the homophobia against you, but I haven't. So I can be a bit more like, and actually talk about it. And I feel like I should.
You could either absolutely shut your head off, couldn't you? Or you could completely shut down because the world is in such a mess.
Yeah.
Or you could think, okay, what can I do today? Okay, I'll write about my experience of being shouted at on the street. And then that poem ends up doing something. And then that poem might end up in Parliament. And then it might help raise awareness for something to pass. So I don't know if it's necessarily just helpful to just share loud things all the time.
And I
think you do that absolutely brilliantly. The balance is just so perfect.
I think I work, like, those are the ones that I maybe I work really hard on them or do loads of edits, but things like about the Queen, like I'm really not into having a monarchy. But the idea, like, I know my auntie loves it. I know my gran collected, tea mugs of the Queen and absolutely loves it. So the idea of like having a nuance. I've also had people just tell me I'm stupid. Like I went to Cambridge University from like very middle class family, from a state school to Cambridge. And I hadn't thought about loads of stuff to do with like sexism or really not at all. I was just working really fucking hard, studying like French and German and maths. And I remember like one of the first weeks, somebody like laughing at me because I didn't know what Freudian slip meant, but really like laughing. And I just remember their like faces just laughing at me. And then somebody said, oh, if you got married, would you take your husband's name? And I'd never thought about like the history of it. I didn't know that in other countries people didn't. I didn't, you just have these traditions that you don't question sometimes. And I said, oh, it depends what the name was. Sort of thought it would be a funny thing to say. Didn't really know. And these two girls just like had a go at me. Like, oh my God, that's so ridiculous. Do you not know that this is like an oppressive thing? Which, it also is. Like, it is a very sexist thing. In loads of countries, it doesn't work like that. But for someone to just like shout at me because I hadn't thought about something. And I don't mean that in terms of like racism, that, oh, you just haven't thought about it. But there is so much money in media, so much money. It's basically like advertising, telling you to like want chocolate, or telling you to think asylum seekers are awful, or telling you to like, there's so much money in it. And if it didn't work to change people's minds, they wouldn't push so much money in it. So yeah, just shouting at someone or calling someone stupid, I just think it's never really helped.
What do you think the relationship is then between poetry and activism? Because do you think they're closely linked?
I think they can be. I don't think they have to be. Like, I feel like somebody writing beautiful poems about a daffodil affects people also in a beautiful way. And I don't think if you write, you should have to be politically engaged. Sometimes I go like waver. Like, my family all had very practical jobs, either in like computing or like nursing, teaching. And sometimes I'm like, this does absolutely nothing to help. And then other times I'm like, no, that's absolutely not true. Like, when people are going through shit, like for me, often songs or comedians for me, I love comedians and I go and watch them. And like Kevin Bridges, I went to see last year and I just like bawled my eyes out through a set because I was just like, you're cheering up 10,000 people in this room, and that is unbelievable. Like, that is amazing, and it has such an effect on people. So I think it can. And like me, like Wilfred Owen, like the war poet from the First World War, my gran, like, my family's not huge on poetry. My mum quite likes poetry, but I remember her like explaining to me this poem, and she lost like family in World War I, and loads of like her great uncle and stuff. She was talking about these young boys in war, and she always cried when she talked about World War I specifically, talking about the trenches and stuff, and like read me this poem. And I'd done it at school and thought not really much of it, but seeing my granny tearing up about this young boy who was a soldier who actually like wrote a poem against the propaganda and against stuff, I was like, oh my God, it's massive. Like, it can do loads.
Do you think that's your earliest memory then of like what made you think poetry was so valuable?
And my earliest memory is a book called Please Mrs. Butler, and there's a poem in it when I was like a kid about it was like, nobody leave the room, everyone listen to me, there was 10 pairs of scissors and now there's only 3. And it's this teacher like locking the kids in the room, like, we have to find these scissors. That was my earliest memory. And there's another one about burping. Like, kids' poetry is so funny. And I think most kids love poetry because most like even things like the Gruffalo is not in the poetry section, but it's a poem. It's just got like a stanza on each page, and loads of kids' books are just a long poem. We just don't call it a poem, and it does annoy me. I feel like the Gruffalo should be in the poetry section, then everyone would know that it was a really popular art form. But then it gets serious, which is also fine. But I feel like that kind of beautiful, funny poetry that I loved as a kid got lost. And then I got more into music and used to print off music lyrics and stuff like that, which is poetry as well, really. It's all poetry.
Poetry is in everything.
Yeah, it's in adverts as well. Like, of course it's powerful. People use it to sell everything.
Yeah, and how many times do you get asked for a wedding poem or a funeral poem on a weekly basis?
Really? Yeah.
It says stuff that other things can't, for sure, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Right, we have a segment of the podcast called Teach Me in a Minute. What do you guys think you can teach us in a minute for our listeners?
I think about writing, but I think we're quite different. So I'll say a 5-second thing, because if I have a problem with writing, if I've got like I want to get inspiration, all I do is read. So that would be like anyone that says, how do you become a better writer? That's it. Just read or listen to audiobooks if you don't like
5
actually
seconds.
reading.
Read or listen to audiobooks. We've got 60 seconds.
Don't start by writing. Get a piece of paper, put your favourite song on, move your pen around the paper. Look through a magazine, pick things out of the magazine, write about them. Read, obviously, if you can find a poem. You can just go onto like Poetry Foundation, type in baked beans, something will come up. Call your friend, record yourself chatting sometimes.
Oh, nice.
I'm literally in the car like writing in my phone notes the whole time, because I feel like our conversations make me think of other things and da-da-da. And also, I really like collaborating with things like paint companies. Get paint pots. I've been doing a lot with Farrow & Ball. I get the paint pot out, the paint pot colour chart out. I pick a swatch, I write into the colour, listen to music.
Nice.
Oh, and with 8 seconds to go. 8 seconds to
And
go.
then
Amazing.
make yourself a huge cup of tea.
Love it. Thank you. That was really, really good. So you do these creative writing classes or breakfast clubs and stuff like that. What got you into doing that?
Well, I started the Creative Writing Breakfast Club on Instagram during the pandemic because I didn't want to do online gigs because I knew I'd just have all this adrenaline and I'd just be sat in my house like losing my mind. So I decided to go onto Instagram it was originally for mine, then I did a lot with Choose Love, and I just did it for charity, like as I did Instagram Live, and people were really into it. So I thought, do you know what, I'm going to try one on a Zoom. And the first one I made about £8, and I had to invite all my friends and family. There was one person who paid, and I just kept going, and it's been going weekly ever since. And people just come from all over the world, right together. People tune in from bed. They're like eating egg sandwiches. They even, when I do evening events, they might get up at 6 a.m, and then I might do breakfast club, and someone might be in like New Zealand drinking a glass of wine in their dressing gown, and you're like, but it is amazing. And it's just a space for people to come together with no pressure to write anything good or anything finished. And people come who have written novels and novels and novels, and they just need like a bit of a change of gear. And obviously my workshops are total chaos in a good way. You know, I'll be like, try this, try this, try this. And it's just a buffet of exercises. But people come also that have never tried anything like that before. And I really believe in, there's so many stuffy poetry courses, and I believe in bringing people together to write in their own way, and also just to play a bit. And I think I set it up because I needed it. So,
It's amazing though, because Laurie also does this thing called Poetry in Pajamas, which is like
your Jimmy Jammies.
it's like an online gig that I did about a week ago, and everyone is just wearing their pajamas in bed. And it was the most relaxing, lovely thing. Like everyone's like stretching at the beginning of it, and loads of people just come to all of them. And like some people sitting with rollers in their hair, and other people obviously have camera turned off, and you can do whatever you want. And you're just so like welcoming. It is so different. And there are obviously like lots of lovely courses people go on, but it's like there's themed like week-long ones. There's this Sunday breakfast one, Poetry in Pajamas, and I've taught like two week-long courses, and I love it, but it's more about giving people like the space, people that already want to come and write and have like a week to write. But I've been told by people on the courses, like somebody said, oh, I've got a PhD in poetry, like why should I be listening to what you're saying. I was like, you've booked this course knowing that I'm one of the tutors. And you're like pulling me up on everything that I'm saying. I was like, I don't know. Go on a different course. We've started going with like Alice Oswald. She's amazing. She's like, it'll be better. But it's just so welcoming to everyone. And it's really nice, this community. And there's often when we do gigs, there's someone that's like, hi, I go to the Breakfast Club. It's so nice to see you in person.
It frees me up though, because I just try things in it. You know, like I never run an exercise I've run before, not in a show-offy way, even though, you know, but it's more just like, look, I don't know how this is going to go either, so let's have a go.
Yeah,
and
it's
just
really
get
nice.
your weird stationery out and your hot water bottle and take your shoes off and, you know, go for a wee in your own toilet halfway through. And
it's so
you know,
good if
people
you've
are
got,
just like vaping in bed and like, yeah, like I say, like literally eating their breakfast. One
also if you've
lady
got a
does
baby
a
or if
full
you've got
face
kids.
routine, all the moisturiser. And I always log in with soaking wet hair, like 2 minutes late. And it sounds great, doesn't it?
It is
Definitely come every Sunday.
No, you say that as if it's not organised, but you're so organised.
Oh, I love it.
Like so organised, putting all the poems up and going through them and like having music that matches everything and everything on theme. Like you're so organised even if your hair's wet.
A little bit of organisation, a little bit of chaos.
Yeah, you can be chaotic if it's organised beforehand, isn't it?
Quite like me and you on tour, isn't it?
I think
really?
so, yeah. It's a spreadsheet, but then when you get
Is there a moment from tour or from your career at all that kind of really stands out as like a big stand-up moment that makes either like you both really proud?
For me, I think like any gig that I managed to do with my kid when she was little, because I took her on tour all the time, and she like sat at 4 years old watching like Harry Potter behind the
I sat
curtain
with
and
her
stuff
once.
like that. You sat with her.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
that's been like a lot and so nice now. I've actually loved it. I thought at first, oh, no one else has to do this. Like, I have to organise my own tours because no one cares about this, blah, 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 blah. But actually, I love the fact that's happened. But I think my favourite gig is at a place called Oran Moor in Glasgow. And even the guy that works there is like, do you not think you should do a bigger venue now? But I just don't ever want to change it. Like, I love it. And they've been so supportive. But my auntie was there, both my aunties, my cousin, loads of my family. They're all from Glasgow. They all live in Glasgow. So they come to a Glasgow gig. And I was selling CDs at the time. And they were lined up behind the table. And my auntie was hammered. And she's quite frightening sometimes. And she was shouting. One of them was telling like life stories. And my auntie was like basically heckling everyone who didn't buy a CD. And normally you might sell like 5% of like merch at a gig. And I sold 250 and it's a 300 capacity venue. And then she got thrown out by the bouncers.
I'll do that tonight if you want.
It was amazing. But it was so nice. And then my gran was there. My auntie is now died. My gran's now died. But we all went for like a kebab after. It was my gran's like first ever late night kebab. She got chatted up by another like 75-year-old guy.
Aww.
She was like 90, absolutely loving
Love
it.
that.
So yeah, I think that was my best gig.
Core
I mean, I can't
memories.
remember how
Core
the actual
memories.
gig went, but it was really, really nice.
I love that. So what about you then, Laurie?
So I think there's lots of like career highlighty stuff, like, you know, doing the Roundhouse and winning money for a poem and it being like a competition that's linked to something really cool. All of those things are great. But my favourite thing really is, you know, because the thing is, I guess when
Gloucester
you're
Services.
is Gloucester Services.
Career highlight.
And mic drop, end of. I guess no, it's people messaging who have read your stuff and saying things to you like, me and my partner, makes me want to cry. Me and my partner sit and read your like a poem a night to each other or something like that, or that your poem's been, you know, this book's for my nan or my mum,
Yeah,
or, you know,
nice.
like just those little things. And recently there's a poem that I wrote about me and my mum sitting outside. Again, I'd soaking wet hair, I'd just been in the pond on Hampstead Heath and we were sat having a coffee in the pandemic, freezing cold outside. And I wrote this poem basically about the fact that my mum had stopped dyeing her hair, I'd stopped wearing makeup, and, you know, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with either of those things. I do both of them myself. But like, you know, it was kind of this idea that we could be a bit sloppy, and it gave us sort of permission to be able to sort of just turn up like we just dived out of the water like with our fresh face and eat a cake. And, you know, that was really beautiful. And that poem I thought was rubbish. And I put it online and it got probably the most whatever attention. And then now that's going to be in an anthology about mothers, which is so lovely. Like,
Yeah, really
so it's
nice.
stuff like that, I think, where it's a bit of like, credit, but also a bit of you've done something
Nice.
maybe. And also, yeah, when poems make a bit of a difference, that feels really great.
Do you think social media has had an impact on like the reach of poetry as well? Like,
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd have I don't think I'd have the same career if not for social media. And I feel like it's the same as like your online stuff. The fact that I think maybe I'm coming from having had a baby, like I left uni, had my daughter. So the whole time I've been doing gigs and stuff, I've had a kid. But obviously other people have other care responsibilities or other responsibilities in general or can't leave their house easily for other reasons. Yeah. And I think anything online, also poetry can be daunting more than anything else. People aren't like scared to listen to music or scared to, I think poetry is the same maybe as like art. People thinking they're like not clever enough to listen to poetry or read a poem, like maybe like going to an art gallery or something. So I think that the idea that it's accessible, like practically, financially, culturally, more because it's online, I think is great. I was just thinking about, just when you said about awards, like I got an award and you won $5,000 with the award. And I was like, this is amazing. And my gran referred to me because she found out that I'd won this award. First of all, she thought I was doing wrestling because it was like a poetry slam that I did before that. So she was really worried because I was small. And she said, oh, but Holly isn't really. And it was like, no, it's poetry slam. Obviously, what the hell is that? But it wasn't, that was one of the other things that my gran said. But the award, I won $5,000. And from then on, every card she sent me, she called me rich bitch. And I was like, she was not, like, she had a grocery store and a post office with my granddad. They were like, they had money. But it was pretty funny.
She did
that was like the best thing that came out of the award, I think.
Your family lose like their minds when a poem book, they're like, yeah, she's a poet, and then suddenly if you're on telly or radio or something, or your poems in like the newspaper,
and
it's like so cool.
They got
and
really,
you're like, what?
I turned down like doing a thing. I was like a judge on this competition, and the award thing was at Buckingham Palace, and I said I wouldn't go because I didn't see what it had to do with like literature having it at the palace. And my auntie and my dad were fuming. And they were like, just take the invitation and we'll go.
What do you hope the next generation of poets will do then differently?
Nothing. Just keep going.
Yeah, be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or just feel like they can write. Not like rip their poems up and think they're rubbish or think their lives are too boring to write about.
Yeah.
Not be arrogant though.
And don't be overwhelmed by the world being as big and messed up as it is. Like, just start. I think, for me, because that can be really hard. You know, like I was mentoring somebody who basically has joined this sort of like group of women. They all write or knit or whatever they're making. And she was like, I just don't see the point when everything is so messed up. And I was like, yeah, but it makes waves. Like, just start.
And also people that you're fighting,
don't not do it.
People fighting for, if you're fighting for someone else's freedom, they don't want to come into a world that's like, they would want to be doing that, I think.
Yeah. Make and play and enjoy it and enjoy the nice things like this festival, but also, you know, you can be doing loads of things. Enjoy scones.
Enjoy scones.
Pockets of scones.
There's one thing I'm so pleased that a lot of things move from YouTube in poetry to like Instagram. And I mean, obviously there's still books. And I love the fact that it was like, books are no one's going to read anymore. Everything's going to be on like tablet. That hasn't happened. Loads of people are like, poetry is dead. That hasn't happened. And but I'm quite pleased that it's gone from like that Instagram now exists. Not sure about the owners now. That's a bit worrying. And Substack is also opening up because there's a lot less to do with like looks. I remember when I did a workshop in schools, or I did a reading in schools. Actually, I go in schools and read. And there was one girl who was so worried about doing poetry because she loved poetry, but she didn't want to go on YouTube because she saw that as the only social media. And actually it's on YouTube where people were like calling me like an ugly ginger rat and stuff.
Yeah, someone said poets are awful, which I wanted to put on a t-shirt. I did want to get that
like
t-shirt.
the idea that you had to be cool.
Yeah.
When there was a lot of like US influence, poetry slams all the time, lots of things on YouTube. And it was like, I guess like the idea of like radio going to MTV, people thinking you had to look a certain way to be a singer now. And I'm glad that's sort of gone. And it's a bit back to like places where you can just put the poem up and share the actual words of a poem.
People being able to share a poem like that, like flicking a coin, is great. You know, especially when I've gigged with Holly, or Georgie Jones is another one who's had a massive reach online. And, you know, women are sitting in their cars like crying about her poem and saying, you know, maybe their friends just had a kid and they're not having full-on conversations every single day, but sending something over, it's almost a little nod, and it's not just, you know, a really naff quote.
They're highly shareable, aren't they?
Yeah. I hope more boys will start. I'm sure they write, but sharing it, or there'll be more of a culture that they can, because most literature festivals, most book festivals, most gigs to do with writing and poetry, the audiences are like, whether it's a guy or a girl or man or woman on the stage, I'd say it's like always over 50% women. And if it's a woman if it's a woman, then it's over like 70%. Women, maybe 80%.
We got a few out there.
We give them a bunch of flowers.
We give them a bunch of flowers every so often.
Well, thank you both of you. It's been so lovely to chat with you.
Oh, thank you.
We have a segment at the end of the show called Change My Mind. And I would love to know from both of you what belief you've changed about writing or success or anything else. If there's a belief that you had once, maybe it was a long time ago or maybe it's more recently, but something that's changed for you.
That you have to have like a certain lifestyle or a certain look to be like bookish, I think is probably mine. I think I watched a lot of movies about writers and most of them were brunettes. And most of them were like very thin, and most of them had a summer house and a lot of time and didn't have to care for anyone really. Just a lot of time to walk around. Yeah. So I think the idea of what a writer is has changed for me. Like, you don't have to have a summer house. You don't have to have a desk. Lovely if you've got it. You can eat chips late at night. You can be any body shape and be a writer. You can have blonde hair and be a writer. But yeah, that sort of stereotype of a writing character, I think, is so silly. It's a bit like, you know, on The Voice, when someone's singing beautifully and it's meant to be better because they're not judging them on their looks, but then they turn around and they always look shocked if that person is like bigger or doesn't look a certain way. Then they're like, oh, it's like, why is it shocking? Your voice has literally nothing to do with your appearance, and your ability to write has nothing to do with your appearance.
Well, from my summer house, I would say, for what I think maybe has changed my mind. So I do lots of one-to-one mentoring, and people will come with poems, and that is such a vulnerable thing to do.
It's a massive deal.
Like, you know, I've written loads of poems. I still don't want to show anyone the new ones. They're awful, you know. It's really uncomfortable. But people will automatically say the fact they're like, my spelling's not very good, and I'm just a bit like, I'm not, like, I even said it in this podcast, I'm not very clever, you know, like things like people get really, and I'm just like, don't worry about that stuff. Like, especially, it's a bit strange if I go into a school and they're teaching like literacy and I get up and go, don't worry about your spelling, just make a mess, scribble everywhere, write on your friend's face. Like, do you know what I mean? But it's like, I guess what I'm trying to say is probably that you don't have to be neat and tidy and have amazing spelling.
The spelling's a big thing though, isn't it?
I've found out recently I've got ADHD, like a lot of people probably are finding out at the moment, those sort of things in later life. And those things, that's why my ideas were so amazing at school, you know? That's why the teacher said her brain is a million miles an hour and she can't get everything down quick enough on the page. So her spelling, but someone checks my spellings now, so don't worry about it. Fizzier the better, stranger the better. Yeah. Be yourself. You don't need a dusty old lectern, do you know what I mean?
I love
your phone, right in your. I mean, it is nice, yeah. And I have got a nice waistcoat on. And from my summer house, I will tell you, it's very nice this time of year. But no, I don't know. Just do you, innit?
Yeah.
Well, thank you both of you. It's been amazing. And
thank you.
I hope your talk goes well later on.
Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning into another episode of VoiceBox. We will be back again soon in your ears. And if you haven't already, please do go and check us out on social media as well. Thank you so much for listening.